Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jen and today I'm filming an end of July allotment tour. This is my allotment behind me. It's about 100 square metres and I'm going to show you around. So here are the brassicas that were first planted. I've redone the netting over them because when I tried to build that cage it just did not go very well. They're doing really well. I recently went along and took out the lower leaves of most of the plants, mostly just to remove any damaged ones so I could see if there was fresh damage. The cage is pretty good, but I still do find occasionally some caterpillars or some butterflies inside the netting, so it's something I just have to keep an eye on, but they are generally looking really, really good. And I don't know whether you can see it, but there are the beginnings of Brussels sprouts just forming on those stems, so that's really exciting. There'll be plenty of Brussels sprouts for Christmas, which is really, really good. And then these are the broccoli plants with the cauliflower being right at the end. Then these are the carrots that I also sowed probably about 4 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks, for Christmas. They just have not germinated, which is really frustrating. Even that one I found has just disappeared. And I think this is because I just didn't water them enough.
So the thing with carrots when you're sowing them in hot weather is they need to be kept quite damp so that they can germinate, and carrots can take up to 21 days to germinate. I think with these, I just didn't water them consistently enough, so I'm going to re-sow onto these drills and make a concerted effort just to water them more regularly and keep a closer eye on them.
Right, next to the carrots that never made it are the courgette plants. Now these have grown loads since my last tour, and they have female flowers that are open with courgettes behind them. This is so exciting. I love courgettes, and all 3 courgette plants are looking really, really good. I'm really pleased with this. And look at that. That's exciting. That's very exciting. This courgette plant is like, it's still growing flowers, and you know that one's been pollinated, it's going to grow, but it's just much smaller, and I kind of wonder whether a plant this small is going to be able to sustain all of that fruit. So I wonder if we might see some kind of fruit dropping off, but we'll see, you know, who knows. Behind these squash are the 2 blackcurrant bushes that I planted the other day. These were £2.50 from Wilko, which was a bargain. I don't know how soon they'll fruit, definitely not this year, maybe not even next year, but for £2.50 it's a long-term game, isn't it? And so often gardening is a long-term game. You know, you can't plant something and then expect to see harvests in, you know, necessarily the next week or the next month, or you know, sometimes it is years, especially with perennial vegetables or fruits. They're very small plants, and that's why they were £2.50, and it's a long game. And you know, I would love to have this allotment for years and years and years, and be able to harvest those berries and do all sorts of interesting things with blackcurrants, but you know, I might not have the allotment for years and years. We might move next year. Even if we do move next year, it's a £5. I could dig them up and take them with me, or I could take some cuttings and leave them here for the person who has the plot next. £5 in the grand scheme of things is not a disaster, but if you have a home that you know is going to be yours indefinitely, or you know, you could even plant them in pots if you know you're going to move. Maybe I should have done that. But I thought it was a bargain, and you know, can gardeners say no to cheap plants? Or plants in general? No. Over here, at first, does not look very exciting at all, but this is where I sowed spring onions and some yellow beetroot and some normal beetroot for kind of some autumn, fall cropping. And at first I was like, oh, maybe these have gone the same way as the carrots and I haven't watered them enough, but very excitingly today, these were not here yesterday. That is a beetroot. And look at all of those. Those are little beetroot seedlings. And there's some little yellow beetroot here. So that is great. The spring onions over there have yet to show their faces, but that's okay. Beetroot's quite an enthusiastic little seedling, whereas spring onions take a bit more cajoling. But I'm very excited for some direct sowing to have worked this month. So these are beetroot and spring onions, and they are next to the rhubarb, which just won't stop. I've committed to not harvesting anymore. I think I need to stop and give it a chance to recuperate. The sunflowers and the geraniums doing really well. That geranium is going to flower soon, and these sunflowers are just ready to burst. Down here, this very sickly looking plant is a spaghetti squash that I had to re-sow because my original spaghetti squash died. And I don't know what's happened to this, but it's very sad at the growing end. And it looked really sad, but I kept watering it. And now it's gone all green and got some flowers out and things. And I just don't know what's going to happen with this. But the lesson that I learned from the Crown Prince squash is when squash look like they're about to die, keep watering them, and you never know, this could be a major success. I mean, it doesn't look like it, but I'll keep hoping.
Now just behind me down here are the kind of second wave of brassicas that I planted. They're the same plants that I bought when I bought these ones. It's just that these were planted out about 3.5 weeks ago, and these were planted out about a week ago. So these are obviously much smaller. I potted them on into pots and then planted them out, and that means I've got a nice staggered harvest. So it wasn't really intentional, but I really like the way that that's worked out, so that's really, really good. So these are sprouts and broccoli, and then behind the brassicas, I'll take you over in a minute just to get a proper look, are the climbing runner beans and the climbing French beans, and these are gorgeous. Really, really pleased with these, so let's go have a look. I mean, I've never been more pleased with my decision to interplant the two types of runner beans. The white and red flowers are so pretty. Definitely more red than white, but you never know. Maybe the white will catch up soon. I've seen loads of bees on these this morning, and they just, I mean, they're getting carried away. I keep snipping off the tops, but they just keep growing, which is so nice. And then the French beans behind them are a little bit slower. They're not quite as tall and as thick, but there are fewer plants of the French beans than there are of the runner beans. And they've got these beautiful little purple flowers, and I love them. Look at that. That's so sweet. And there are, in fact, beans forming on all of these. So, if you have a look down here, that's definitely a runner bean. And there are some more little ones there. And I've seen a couple of tiny, tiny French beans, but they are obviously just a little bit further behind the runner beans. I've had quite an interesting tomato year this year. I mean, it's been a bit higgledy-piggledy and a bit kind of all over the place. But I think there are some real surprises here. The garden centre bought cherry tomatoes are cropping, but you know, not prolifically. My garden centre bought plum tomatoes, have been rubbish. My seed sown plum tomatoes that I was convinced would never grow, they are now fruiting, but are growing a bit oddly. And my tumbling cherry tomatoes are the stars of the show. They are just flowering everywhere. I'm so excited for them to fully ripen. I'll show you. So these two cherry tomato plants are the garden centre ones called Nectar, and they have been fruiting. They're quite nice. They're not the best tasting tomatoes I've ever had, which is, you know, disappointing with something called Nectar. But they are doing more flowering. Like, that's pretty prolific. Just needs to hurry up a bit. I'm just impatient, that's the moral of the story. These are my garden centre bought plum tomatoes. Just slow and like growing really, really oddly. Not very vigorous, I would say, which is a bit odd. Now these are my seed sown plum tomatoes, and they are certainly doing better than I ever expected, because I didn't expect them to do anything. And you know, there are fruits coming. These are Napoli VF, but lots of them are doing this really weird thing where they are growing, they'll get to a certain height, and then, like, I mean, this one has this random leaf just growing instead of a growing shoot. Like, what is it doing? I don't need another leaf, I need a growing tip so that you can continue to get taller and bear more fruit, and lots of them are doing this. It started off with my Roma tomatoes over there, and you can see I've had to like get the side shoots to grow up so that they can continue to get taller, and that's what I've done with these. I haven't been pinching out all of the side shoots just so they can continue to grow upwards. But it's like, why would a tomato plant stop growing when it's like a foot tall?
That is not what they are supposed to be doing, and I don't understand why it would do that and why so many would do that as well. So that's very frustrating. Right, these are the stars of the show. This is one plant that I grew from seed, and look how many millions of flowers there are. I mean, it's crazy. This is Tumbling Tom Yellow, and it's done such a good job. Because it's a tumbling tomato, so it's a determinate tomato, it won't get taller than this. This is probably only, knee height. You don't have to do any pinching out of side shoots. You don't have to do anything to it other than water it and maybe occasionally feed it. And it's going to give me so many tomatoes. So I grew this one from seed, and this other massive one from seed, and the one that's at the end from seed. And then these smaller, more compact ones are still tumbling tomatoes, but they're ones I bought from a garden centre. And they are fruiting. They have, quite low maintenance requirements. But, a compact thing like that, it's just not as impressive as this. I'm going to grow so many more tumbling tomatoes next year. This has been so good. And the squash plants are just going crazy. And I love it. I was so convinced that these wouldn't grow. I was so convinced that I wouldn't get any squash at all because they look like they were on the verge of death. And they've just done really well. I'll show you some of the fruits because the fruits are getting really, really big. I've even had to chop some of these bits here to stop them overtaking everything else that way. But there's probably maybe 8 plants in there, but I would say 5 of them, the ones that I grew from seeds, not the ones I bought from the garden centre, they're taking over. They've gone, do you know what, this is our show, everyone else get out the way. So this is my spaghetti squash plant. Again, this is one I sowed for the second time, just like the rubbish one I showed you earlier, but this has done much better. It's got flowers going on, it's got some female flowers just there, so hopefully I will get some spaghetti squash. And then Crown Prince are just stealing the show. Look at these guys, they are enormous, and there's so many of them as well. This is just a couple of the Crown Prince squash that are growing on the allotment, and I'm so excited because they're my absolute favourite. Guys, there's enough flowers for everyone. Both of you don't need to be in there at the same time. There are so many flowers, so many pollinators. It's just flower central, isn't it? There are so many fruits. They're just all over the place. Look at that guy, he's enormous. So yeah, the squash are doing super well. Do you know what? There's one squash plant just there that has got, I pruned it and it's still looking rubbish. It looks like powdery mildew, so I'm half tempted to take it out, but it's I think it's a pumpkin or a butternut squash that I bought from the garden centre, and currently only that plant is affected. It's almost like it's a virus rather than powdery mildew, and it's just that plant that's got it, but I don't know. I'm umming and ahhing. Let me know in the comments if you would just pull the plant out or whether you'd leave it and hope for some fruit. I'm dithering. I'm not that fussed about pumpkins. I bought it because I thought none of the other squash would grow. I don't know, I'm dithering. And the cucumbers have been doing really, really well. They're setting plenty of fruit. So this is Femme Spot, and so is this one. So these will grow nice, long, full-length cucumbers. And then this one is a mini cucumber, and I've already had 4 cucumbers off of this plant. It's lovely. It grows these cute little cucumbers, and they're probably only, not even a handspan's length, but they are really tasty, and it's doing so well. It's just a shame it's not gherkin. I really wanted to pickle some gherkins for my husband this year, but it's just not happening. Super sad. But look at that cucumber. That's exciting. I love cucumber. I could eat most of the cucumber as just a snack, and I know that's quite weird, but I don't care. I love it. So here is the carrots and the parsnips and a couple of marigolds thrown in. I've been harvesting these carrots and they are really, really tasty. So I'm going to sow some more of this seed over where the Christmas carrots failed. Do you know what? It's really interesting because this carrot seed is like millions of years old. I found it in like an old seed collection from years and years ago. Then the one I sowed over here was brand new seed. I mean, it was probably user error, let's be honest. But the parsnips are looking great. The carrots are really tasty. I mean, I still don't know whether these parsnips will look like parsnips or whether they'll look like a disaster. You know, the greenness just makes me think positive thoughts about the future of the parsnips.